Aeronautics companies have shown huge scientific advances this century. As space exploration advances, it is important to keep informed on what the different agencies discover and achieve. Technology has advanced incredibly fast in the past years. As we are now facing the fourth industrial revolution, technology is being used into the space exploration field too. Until the recent years, space exploration was something only the government could afford. But as technology progresses, it has become something more people seem to achieve, creating private agencies. Two agencies that stand out for their innovations are SpaceX, which is a private company founded in 2002 by Elon Musk, and NASA, which is a governmental company from the United States. The purpose of this research paper was to search for information about both agencies so we could predict which agency, even NASA or SpaceX, would be the first one to send a person to Mars. These two agencies are the pioneers when it comes to space exploration, them being the ones that have gone before us up to the present day. By comparing each of these agencies first in a general way and then into the specifically Mars project, here we presented some arguments that helped this investigation to prove if the thesis was correct or not. The thesis statement settled at the beginning of the research paper was: SpaceX has advanced more than NASA, and it is thought that this private company will be the first one to send a person to Mars. In this video, we will talk about the results of the delivered research paper, which was titled Aeronautics Companies Trying to Get to Mars.
Well, since the man's first journey to outer space, there have been companies that have been really curious about what's out there in space. And two of them that are really important are SpaceX and NASA. Well, I'll start off with NASA. NASA stands for National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and it was founded in 1958 as part of the government of the United States. It is currently developing new technologies to upgrade their satellites and at the same time learning more about the Earth and the solar system. They invest their monetary capital to explore different aspects like the asteroids, the stars, Mars, and beyond. And according to their webpage, their company has had about 200 missions in outer space. Well, presidents all over the United States have supported the NASA in their missions because they too are really curious about outer space and what's out there. So they have put a lot of money into NASA in their mission so that they can cover the budget that they have. And well, some other contributions from NASA are that the CEV Thermal Protection System Advanced Development Project, which is a technology development activity led by the NASA with teams from NASA Johnson Space Center, Houston Kennedy Space Center, FLA Langley Research Center, Hampton, and it's basically a project where it's able to be manufactured and sufficiently understood by the NASA to proceed with the flight development. And the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Pasadena. This activity primary objective is to show that a single heat shield design that meets both lunar permit. Also the CV Aerosciences project, which is a NASA aerodynamic and aerothermal database development project led by NASA Johnson with teams from NASA Ames, NASA Langley, and JPL. Well, now we'll talk about SpaceX. Well, SpaceX is a private company that was founded in 2002 by Elon Musk. Basically, this company designs, manufactures, and launches advanced rockets and aircrafts, revolutionizing space technology. All of this with one simple objective: enabling people to live in other planets. SpaceX currently is really into the exploration of Mars and being able to make people live there. That's what they're more focused on right now. Well, they developed the Falcon launch vehicle family and the Dragon spacecraft family, which both deliver payloads to Earth's orbit. They also have made the first privately funded liquid propellant rocket to reach orbit, as well as launch, orbit, and recover a spacecraft, They sent the first spacecraft to the International Space Station, and they were also the first to launch an object into solar orbit. In September of 2016, Elon Musk unveiled the Interplanetary Transport System program, which was set to develop spaceflight technology for use in manned interplanetary spaceflight. In the long term, this could mean that there can be human settlements in Mars. He also has highlighted that 2 individuals contracted the company to send them in a free return trajectory around the moon, set to launch in 2018. This could mean the beginning of lunar tourism.
Hello, my name is Daniela Núñez, and I'm going to talk about the Chapter 2 of NASA versus SpaceX. So first of all, Race to Mars. What is Race to Mars? This is a name that has been given to the competition between NASA and SpaceX, among others, to be the first agency to take human. Hello, my name is Daniela Núñez, and I'm going to talk about the Chapter 2, NASA versus SpaceX. So first of all, Race to Mars. Race to Mars is a name given to the competition between NASA and SpaceX, in which company will be the first one to reach to Mars for the first time in history. So first of all, NASA is the most well-known agency that there is. They, throughout history, has been developing technology to reach further than the moon. And according to their webpage, they are developing new technologies, advancing in aeronautics research, and they had set several goals. The first goal is in the year 2030 to go to Mars for the very first time in history, and in the year 2042 to be able to live in Mars permanently. And according to NASA's webpage, and I quote, they are pioneering the future in space exploration, scientific discovery, and aeronautics research. So, although NASA has advanced a lot, there's still a lot to be done. For example, they have only sent orbiters, landers, and rovers to space. Now, NASA has a great competitor, which is SpaceX. In fact, it is its greater competitor in the so-called Race to Mars. Now, in a short amount of time, this agency has risen to the top among the other space agencies, and they have advanced a lot in this particular area of science. We have to take into consideration both of the agencies' chances of winning. First of all, NASA has been operating for a longer time, so they have more knowledge and more history, and they have a lot of resources since they are a governmental agency, but they are also limited by this fact that they depend on the government. But SpaceX is a non-governmental agency, so they have more freedom. Besides that, in a very short amount of time, since this is a relatively new company, they have accomplished a lot of things and a lot of goals. I want to talk more specifically about NASA. They are now creating a spacecraft which is going to be what it will take us to Mars for the very first time, which is the Orion spacecraft. This is supposed to be a 4-man spacecraft which is meant to travel to Mars back and forth, and it is thought to be what it will go down in history as a means of transportation which will take us to Mars for the very first time. It's important to discuss the goals since both agencies have practically the same goals. The first one obviously is to be the first ones to reach to Mars. The second is to be able to live in Mars, to make life suitable in Mars for humans. And the third one, once the second one is accomplished, is to spread throughout the whole solar system. 2030 mission and of course the 2042 mission, NASA is actually planning the 2020 mission, which its purpose is to gather more information and more data about this planet so that both of these missions can be accomplished and to have enough data and information so that we could be able to travel to this planet. So according to NASA's webpage, and I quote, this mission includes producing oxygen from the Martian atmosphere, identifying usable resources, improve landing techniques, characterizing weather and environmental conditions that could affect the mentioned goals. It's very important since of course we need oxygen to be able to live, first of all. Then second of all, we need to identify the usable resources. We cannot take every single thing we have on Earth and take it into Mars so we can live properly. The best thing we can do is to take advantage of the resources that Mars can offer, even though it seems like there's not many of them. Now also improve landing techniques which will make the transportation from Earth to Mars easier for us and actually safer. Characterizing weather and environmental conditions. This is very important since the weather is actually a very strong factor which will make us up for living in Mars or not. So once we identify it and once we can know how to properly adapt to it, it'll be easier to be able to live on Mars. In conclusion, there is this thing called Race to Mars, which is a race between several governmental agencies which plan on being the first ones to take humans on Mars and going down in history as the very first ones. So the strongest competitors are obviously NASA and SpaceX. NASA is a governmental agency and SpaceX is a non-governmental agency. Both of these agencies have a lot of chances at winning this race since they have a lot of resources among very other things. Now, both of these agencies have the same three goals, which is to reach to Mars, be able to live in Mars, and spread throughout the whole solar system.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what SpaceX doing in its career to Mars. SpaceX is in a good position right now. They say they have an exact analysis that they are going to get in Mars like in 4 years, something like that. And if in the first mission, in order to recognize the actual place that they are going to land, and another second mission in 2 years after the first mission, that is 4 years, and they are going to look for some resources like water resources or metal resources. Let's talk a little bit about what involves the enterprise. One of these, the most important thing in this company, I would say that is its leader, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is one of the most charismatic leaders in our modern society, and he's really ambitious in all his projects. For example, in Tesla, he's investing a lot. Besides, he's losing a lot of money. He's trying to invest and try to make try to put Tesla in a great position. While in SpaceX, he's even more ambitious. He says in an interview. He said in an interview that he's going to invest whatever it takes in order to put SpaceX in a top position, better than any other space company like NASA or Blue Origin. Let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about the 40 to 100 40 to 100 years plan that SpaceX has. This plan involves a lot of things. It involves, for example, agriculture, market, and colonization. Let's talk a little bit about the last one, colonization. He says that he can translate colonization from about 1 million people. He said that he can put 1 million people in Mars. But there's one thing that he has not talked about, and this thing is that we need water, we need electricity, we need sanitary systems and all these kind of stuff that are necessary to develop a correct way of life. And he has to talk about how he's going to implement all of this stuff, and even breathable air. He has to talk about that. And another thing that he talks about, well, that he hasn't talked about, is about agriculture. He said that they can develop agriculture in Mars because of they say there is some water resources.
More specifically about NASA, this agency has a very strong chance of winning. They have set a 3-year plan of going to Mars. First, in 2020, send robots to this area to examine and explore so that we can gather information. The second one is to take humans to Mars, and the third one is to already be able to live in this planet. Now, this seems like a very hard thing to do, but we are still creating and developing new technologies, so I believe in the future this will be able to happen. Now, we cannot really tell which agency will be the one that will win the race. There is a very strong chance NASA could win, but also SpaceX, so all that we can do is wait and let time tell us which will be the winner of the so-called race to Mars.
From all of this water, but the Martian soil consists a lot of salts that are toxic for humans. So there must be a process in order to make able to eat all of this agriculture that can be used. Now let's talk a little bit about the trips that he wants to put in order to have some fun going to Mars. It is going to be expensive, yes. He ranked the place about $200,000. That's not that much because it is an experiment. It is an experimental, it's new thing in order to travel to Mars, and that it is something new, and it is going to be the first prize there is going to be the first prize in market in order to travel through the entire to Mars. And he says that he's going to put a lot of restaurants, and he says that he's going to travel in a spaceship, in a really big spaceship, a reusable spaceship, not a reusable spaceship. And by doing this, he's going to save a lot of utility, and he's going to avoid a lot of pollutants.
After doing this research, it was possible to show arguments that sustain our thesis statement, which was SpaceX has advanced more than NASA, and it is thought that this private company will be the first one to send a person to Mars to start colonize the red planet. We also got to the conclusion that both agencies, SpaceX and NASA, are space exploration companies that have shown huge and transcendental advances through history. SpaceX being the one that has invested a bigger budget in what the determination has been looking for, which is basically taking human species to Mars. Comparing both agencies' web pages, it is visible that both agencies have shown enormous and transcendental advances for history, but it is still remarkable how SpaceX is interested in being a pioneer in many missions, and so they are improving their technical equipment. Even though NASA is not far behind with their innovations and advances, according to the ideals SpaceX is talking about, it is thought that this private agency will be the first one to send a person to Mars to start colonize the red planet, bringing big progression to human life and to future generations.